Picture this, a city so completely flooded that people are actually living in the trees. Seriously, they're hanging their cooking pots from branches just to keep them out of the murky water below. Starvation is everywhere. For 3 solid years, this has been the reality in the city of Jinyang in 453 BC. It's a living nightmare. And yet, its people absolutely refuse to surrender.
Now, watching all this from a hill nearby is the guy who caused it all, the brilliant conqueror Zhi Yao. And he's laughing. He turns to his allies and boasts, "Today I learned that water can destroy a country." I mean, can you believe the arrogance? He was the most powerful man in the state of Jin, about to seal the deal on his total victory. What he had no idea about was that he had just signed his own death warrant with those words. So how in the world did it all go so wrong for him? We're going to break this incredible story down into 5 parts. First, the siege itself. Then, the wild reason the people held on. Next, the weaponized river that completely backfired. Then, the midnight betrayal that changed everything. And finally, how this one single night kicked off one of the bloodiest eras in all of history, the Warring States period. Okay, so first up, let's get to know the man behind the flood, Zhi Yao. This guy was a super talent. You know the type. His entire life, he was the smartest, the strongest, and for sure the most ruthless person in any room he walked into. He was a man absolutely drowning in his own hubris, and he was convinced he was invincible. This siege, this was supposed to be his masterpiece. Inside that city, things were beyond awful. We're talking people trading their own children for food just to make it another day. But here's the crazy part. Through all of that misery, they stayed 100% loyal to their leader, Zhao Wuxu. No riots, no one's screaming to surrender. Which brings up a fascinating question. How does a leader get that kind of loyalty in the middle of absolute hell on Earth? Well, the answer isn't in the city's walls or its weapons. It's in a brilliant, long-term strategy that was put into place years before any of this happened. You can think of it like an insurance policy, but one you pay for with goodwill, not gold. And that was the true source of their power. So let's just ask the question straight up. In a world full of brutal, power-hungry warlords, why on earth would you put up with this? The answer really tells you something profound about where real, lasting power comes from when things get tough. And that brings us to this idea of the people's insurance policy. See, years before the war, when the Zhao family was picking their main stronghold, they could have chosen cities with way higher walls or much bigger stockpiles of food, but they turned them all down for a very specific reason. You see, Zhao Wusu's father had a specific rule for the governors of Jinyang. Do not treat this city like a cash cow. Don't squeeze every last drop out of the people. Instead, make it a refuge. He understood a simple truth. In a real crisis, your greatest asset isn't your money or your walls. It's whether or not your people want to fight for you. And the people of Jinyang fought because the Zhao family was the only thing standing between them and a tyrant who played by no rules. All right, so while the Zhao family was banking on their people, Zhi Yao was putting his faith in something much, much bigger, the raw power of nature itself. And his plan, you have to admit, was as brilliant as it was terrifying.
Now, we're not talking about just a simple dam here. This was a massive work of military engineering. He literally rerouted an entire river. He built these huge levees to channel all of its force right up against the walls of Jinyang. He turned the Fen River into a weapon of mass destruction. And the scary part? It was working. The city was slowly but surely drowning.
And that brings us to the big turning point. I mean, Zhi Yao's plan was basically flawless. Victory was right there for the taking. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, as he was up on that hill, gloating, he made a critical mistake. He explained his genius plan a little too well. And right here, you see this huge gap between what he thought was happening and what was actually happening. Zhi Yao looked at his allies from the Han and Wei families and saw 2 guys who were super impressed. But they looked at his weaponized river and saw a preview of their own future. Because guess what? Their own capital cities were also built right next to rivers. You're not going to believe this, but Zhi Yao was actually warned. His advisor, a man named Si, saw the look on the other leaders' faces. It wasn't awe, it was fear. He went to Zhi Yao and told him point blank, these 2 families will revolt. But Zhi Yao, totally blinded by his own legend, just laughed it off. He couldn't imagine anyone having the guts to betray him. He was about to get the shock of his life. And that, my friends, brings us to the midnight betrayal. While the arrogant Zhi Yao was sleeping, probably dreaming of his big victory parade, the leader trapped in the drowning city, Zhao Wuxu, was about to play his last desperate card. So, Zhao Wuxu sends his most trusted guy, Zhang Mengtan, to sneak out of Jinyang in the dead of night. His mission sounds completely impossible. Find the leaders of the Han and Wei armies and convince them to betray their all-powerful commander while they're in the middle of winning. It was basically a suicide mission, and the fate of an entire nation was riding on it. Zhang Mengtan didn't mess around with any fancy speeches. He laid out the brutal, simple truth for them with one perfect line. Once the Zhao Minyan are eaten, you are the next course on the menu. The logic was just undeniable. If they stuck with Zhi Yao, they'd win today and get wiped out by him tomorrow. But if they sided with Zhao, they had a chance to survive. Just like that, the deal was done. And the plan they cooked up unfolded with deadly precision. On the chosen night, Han and Wei soldiers snuck over to the river. Step 1, assassinate the guards watching the dams. Step 2, break the levees. Step 3, reverse the flood. Zhi Yao's own weapon was now coming right back at him. The irony here is just incredible. Zhi Yao's own camp, which he had carelessly set up on the low ground just for convenience, was hit with the full force of the river. His army was thrown into total chaos, scrambling in the dark, suddenly waist-deep in the very same water they had been using to kill their enemy. And at that exact moment of chaos, the gates of Jinyang burst open. Can you imagine the scene? 50,000 desperate Zhao soldiers pour out on whatever they could float on, screaming for revenge. They crash right into their drowning, disorganized enemies. It was an absolute slaughter. Zhi Yao was captured, executed, and his entire clan was wiped from the history books. So, a city was saved and a tyrant was dead. But the shockwaves from this one night would change the entire map. Let's zoom out and see why this battle wasn't just an ending, it was a terrifying new beginning. Now, it's interesting. Historians often don't point to the battle itself in 453 BC. They usually mark the year 403 BC as the official start of the Warring States period. So, why the 50-year gap? What made it official?
The answer is the Zhou king. The guy who was theoretically the supreme ruler of all the lands finally just gave up. He officially recognized the three victors, Han, Zhao, and Wei, as their own independent states. It was basically a formal announcement that the old system was dead. Central authority had completely collapsed. It was now every state for itself.
And you can see the domino effect right here on this timeline. The battle in 453 shatters the old power structure. 50 years later, in 403, that break becomes official, kicking off a 200-year-long free-for-all that only ends when one state, the Qin, finally conquers everyone else and creates the first unified Chinese empire in 221 BC. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? This one battle created a brand new world order. The giant state of Jin was gone, replaced by the three Jins, Han, Zhao, and Wei, who became the new center of power. The old, more restrained way of doing things was over. This was the beginning of the age of total war, with 7 kingdoms locked in a fight to the death for ultimate survival. So that brings us to the end of this absolutely incredible story. But I gotta ask you a question. Looking back on it, what do you think was Zhi Yao's single biggest mistake? Was it his pure arrogance? Was it the tactical blunder of camping on low ground? Or was it something deeper? A failure to understand that you can't build power on fear alone? Let us know what you think down in the comments. The fall of Jin was a massive moment, but really, it's just setting the stage for the next chapter. If you enjoyed this journey through history, make sure to like and subscribe, because our next explainer is going to follow the path from these warring states to the rise of China's very first emperor. Thanks so much for joining us.